Lemony S Puppet Theatre is essentially a puppet theatre, but we like to explore the relationship between actors on stage with puppets. We love to tell interesting stories that inspire us and hopefully inspire our audiences.
Crow Kid started with me reading an article from the BBC website.
About this young girl who was feeling lonely, and she used to play in the backyard, and she used to feed local crows, and then one day crows, they started bringing back little trinkets and gifts for the little girl, and she treated them as treasures.
But if you looked at the treasures, they looked like trash. So we had this idea, well, you know, imagine if a kid collected all of this stuff and took it to school and nobody believed her that it came from the crows. So that was kind of the genesis of the story, and then we kind of tied that together with the sense of isolation, and then also how our connections with animals can actually help you get out of that sense of isolation. We actually started this story in a completely different way. We started using tabletop puppets, which are, if you imagine, little figurines of humans. And so we actually made all of the puppets, and we were getting ready to rehearse, and then we realised we actually couldn't tell the story that we'd written with those puppets because they're too complicated.
And we weren't very pleased with them. We noticed one of the shadows being projected on the wall of the rehearsal space, and we thought that looked fantastic.
So we decided that shadows was the best way, because shadow puppetry is a really simple way of telling complex stories.
And we have 2D shadow puppets, but we also use a 3D shadow crow, which creates a different sort of 3D image of the shadow, but it also gives the audience a chance to look at the puppets as well as the shadows that we're creating.
So we use a torch to kind of change the perspective, to make the puppets bigger and smaller. We use little tiny bits of colour in front of lights so that you suddenly get an entire wall of colour.
Well, what's really lovely about this show is it's non-narrative. So the kids narrate the show as they're watching it, and sometimes you get parents going shh, thinking they need to be quiet, but we love hearing the real-time response while the kids watching, like, oh, it's a bus, oh, it's the crow, they're eating the cupcake. And that tells us that, you know, they're able to tell the story without any words, and they fill in the gaps for us.
It's really interesting because the morning audiences are usually quite young, and they're quite vocal, which is lovely because they chat all the way through it and they narrate the story as they go. And then the afternoon audiences, they tend to be a bit older, and they're completely silent. But they're silent because they're watching, because every now and again I just have a little glance to see what's going on, and their eyes are as big as saucers, and they're really taking in what we're offering, which is fantastic. And then we're able to have a little questions and answers at the end, and some of the questions are so smart, you know, it's really, they've really watched and really understood what they're seeing, but they've got questions about the techniques of how it's done, and I think that's really great.
Kids can go home and they can use old cereal boxes, which is a thin card, so it's easy to cut but holds its integrity, and, you know, use cellophane to add colour, use your iPhone torches, use just normal torches, and just explore with shadows and have fun.